I am Cataloger First Class Jo'van Lysa of the PCAF, assigned to record the proceedings of the Galactic Council for the Permanent Archive. My species has served as the Council's record keepers for over 4,000 galactic years. We do not take sides. We do not offer opinions. We do not interfere. We observe, we catalog, and we preserve. This is our function and our purpose. The PCAF are not built for emotion. Our neural architecture processes information without the filter of feeling. We do not experience anger or joy or fear the way other species do. We experience accuracy. We experience completeness. We experience the satisfaction of a record that captures every detail, every nuance, every word spoken in the Great Chamber. I have been alive for 312 years. I have cataloged over 40,000 sessions. I have recorded treaties and disputes and declarations of war and celebrations of peace. I have watched species rise from pre-industrial savagery to interstellar civilization. I have watched others collapse into extinction. Nothing in my experience prepared me for humanity. What I am about to record is the most significant event in the Council's history. It is the story of how the Galactic Council made a decision that destroyed itself. And it is the story of the species that thanked us for it. I will begin at the beginning. I have converted the human dating system to Galactic Standard Years for the archive. The Galactic Standard Calendar begins with the founding of this council. 1 human year equals 1.25 Galactic Standard Years. In GSY 5872.5, human year 2291, the humans from a planet called Earth achieved faster than light travel. They had been confined to their home system for their entire history, a history filled with conflict and cooperation, with invention and discovery, with division and unity. They fought each other for resources. They built empires and watched them fall. They learned from their failures and adapted. When they finally broke the light barrier, they did what every young species does. They reached out. They explored. They sent ships to the stars expecting to find neighbors. For 102 human years, they found nothing. They colonized a world 200 light years from their home in GSY 5893.75, human year 2308. They called it New Hope. The planet was rich in resources and life and potential. 100,000 colonists settled there in the first wave. By the time the galaxy noticed them, that number had grown to 2 million. In GSY 6000, human year 2393, a human exploratory vessel finally encountered another spacefaring species. The Valdari were a peaceful people, scholars, and diplomats who had been part of the galactic community for over 1,000 years. They had large dark eyes and tall slender bodies and a way of speaking that made even the most aggressive statements sound like gentle suggestions. They greeted the humans with open arms. The humans were ecstatic. They had spent a century alone in the dark. Now they had found friends. The Valdari introduced the humans to the Galactic Council. This was the body that governed interstellar relations, that settled disputes between species, that maintained the peace across thousands of star systems. The Council was ancient beyond human comprehension. It had been meeting for over 6,000 Galactic Standard Years, which is roughly 4,800 human years. The Council was founded in GSY 0, more than 2,400 years before the Human Common Era. On Earth, the Great Pyramids had not yet been built. The Council was already resolving disputes between species. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had witnessed the birth and death of civilizations. The Valdari ambassador who sponsored the human introduction was named Ambassador Solon Veth. He was one of the oldest beings I have ever cataloged, over 1,000 years old. He spoke about the humans with warmth that was unusual for his reserved species. These beings are curious, he told the Council. They ask questions constantly. They take things apart to understand how they work. They build and rebuild and improve. They make mistakes and learn from them. They are young and energetic and sometimes reckless. But they have something that I have not seen in a young species before. They have hope. The Council listened to Ambassador Veth with polite attention. Then it did what it always did with new species. It assigned them observer status and told them to wait. The humans waited. But they did not stop exploring. They did not stop building. They did not stop asking questions. The Council had never encountered a species quite like humanity. The human application for membership was submitted in GSY 6023.75, human year 2412. I was present for those proceedings. I cataloged every word. The council deliberated for months. Some species argued that humans were too aggressive. Others argued that they were too young. Others argued that their history of internal conflict made them unpredictable. The application was rejected. But the council, in what it believed was a gesture of mercy, allowed humanity to maintain an ambassador, a single diplomat who could attend council sessions and observe and report back to Earth. The humans were useful for emergencies, the council reasoned. They were innovative and resourceful. They could be called upon when the galaxy needed someone to solve a problem that no one else could solve. The humans accepted this arrangement. They sent their best diplomats to represent them. They participated in council discussions when invited. They offered assistance during crises. They were polite and professional and patient. But they were not content. For 138 human years, they watched the council operate. They saw how the old species protected their interests. They saw how trade was controlled by guilds that stifled competition. They saw how technology was hoarded rather than shared. They saw how power was concentrated among the founding species while newer members were given limited influence. The humans saw all of this and said nothing. But they remembered. During that time, the human presence in the galaxy grew quietly. Their colonies expanded. Their technology advanced. Their economy developed into something that the established species found difficult to categorize. Humans did not measure wealth the way others did. They seemed more interested in building relationships than accumulating credits. They traded knowledge as freely as goods. They offered help without demanding compensation. This made the other species uncomfortable. The Gorthak were the most uncomfortable of all. Ambassador Grekveth represented the Gorthak Empire at the council. He was 200 galactic years old, which is 250 human years. His scales were a deep crimson that had faded to rust with age. His eyes were yellow and unblinking. His voice was a low rumble that carried the weight of ancient grudges. He hated humans. This hatred was personal. It was also, from his perspective, entirely justified. The Gorthak Empire had attacked the human colony of New Hope in GSY 6196.25, human year 2550. The reasons were complex and rooted in territorial disputes that predated human contact with the galaxy. The Gorthak claimed the system had once been theirs. They produced ancient star charts and historical documents that they said proved their ownership. The humans, who had been living on New Hope for 242 human years, disagreed. The Gorthak sent 30 warships to take the colony by force. The Terran Third Fleet met them in orbit. 50 human vessels, smaller and less advanced than the Gorthak warships, but crewed by beings who had trained their entire lives for combat. The battle lasted 4 days. The humans won. But the war did not end there. The Gorthak had landed ground forces on New Hope before the fleet engagement began. 10,000 soldiers had descended on the colony, expecting to occupy a defenseless settlement. They found a population that refused to surrender. Ambassador Grekveth's son was among those ground forces. He was a squadron commander, a decorated officer with a distinguished record. He landed on New Hope with his troops. He was shot and killed by a human farmer. The weapon was a primitive projectile device called a shotgun. The farmer was a middle-aged woman named Anna Whitfield who had been tilling her fields when the invasion began. She saw armed strangers approaching her home. She picked up the weapon she kept for protection. She fired. The slug hit Ambassador Grekveth's son in the chest. His armor stopped most of the damage, but the impact knocked him to the ground. Before he could rise, Anna Whitfield reloaded and fired again. This time the shot found his throat. He died on the soil of a world he had been sent to conquer. The council was furious. I recorded every moment of the session that followed. It lasted 12 standard days. I have never seen the council chamber in such a state. Representatives shouted. They pounded their podiums. They demanded action. Ambassador Grekveth stood before the council and wept. His massive frame shook with grief. His voice cracked when he spoke. My son is dead. Killed by a primitive weapon wielded by a civilian on a world that rightfully belongs to the Gorthak Empire. And the beings responsible for this outrage sit among us as observers. They watch our proceedings. They listen to our debates. They benefit from our protection while their colonists murder our children. He turned to face the human delegation. Ambassador Ian Lewis sat alone at the human station. He was 60 years old, with white skin and white hair streaked with black. His eyes were blue. His expression was calm. He did not flinch under Grekveth's gaze. "You did this," Grekveth said. "Your species, your colony, your farmer, your weapon, your responsibility." Ambassador Lewis rose slowly. He adjusted his jacket. He looked around the chamber at the representatives of 100 species, all of them watching him with varying degrees of hostility. "Ambassador Grekveth," he said, "I offer my condolences for your loss. No parent should outlive their child. Your condolences mean nothing. I understand that you feel that way, but I say them anyway because they are true. The death of any being is a tragedy. The death of a child is an unbearable weight." Grekveth's claws extended. "Do not speak to me of children. Your people killed mine. Your people invaded our colony. Your people brought 30 warships to a world full of civilians. Your people landed ground forces with the intent of occupying a settlement that has been home to 2 million humans for 242 years. My people defended themselves. Your people had no right to be there. The Valdari recognized our claim to the New Hope system. The Council's own territorial commission validated our settlement. We were there legally and with full galactic approval. The Council was wrong. Then the Council should have addressed that through diplomatic channels, not through military invasion." High Arbiter Keltor of the Krell Dominion rose from his seat. His species was known for their strict adherence to law and procedure. They were natural prosecutors, meticulous and relentless. Keltor's scales were black, his eyes were red, and his voice carried the cold authority of a being who had never lost a case. "Ambassador Lewis, you are correct that the territorial claim was validated. But the human response to the Gorthak military action raises serious questions about the fitness of your species for continued participation in galactic society. Questions such as the nature of your military. Your Third Fleet destroyed 30 Gorthak warships with only 50 vessels. That is a casualty ratio that should not be possible for a species that has only been spacefaring for 259 years. Admiral Collins is an exceptional commander. Admiral William Collins, known by the nickname Badger. He has served in the Terran Defense Force for 40 years. He has never lost an engagement." "That is correct. 11 confirmed engagements against pirate forces, 3 against species that attempted to encroach on human territory, and now a decisive victory against the Gorthak Empire. Your admiral has a perfect record. I am proud of our admiral's record. That record is the problem, Ambassador. No species achieves a perfect military record without being exceptionally dangerous. Your people are proficient at violence in a way that makes the rest of us uncomfortable." Ambassador Lewis was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "High Arbiter, I will not apologize for my species being competent at self-defense. We have spent our entire history learning to resolve conflicts. Sometimes we succeeded through diplomacy. Sometimes we failed and fought wars. But we always learned from our failures." He paused. "We did not become proficient at violence because we enjoy it. We became proficient because we had to protect what we built. The alternative was letting others take it from us. And you believe that justifies your actions? I believe it explains them. There is a difference." High Arbiter Keltor called for the first formal presentation. He looked at Ambassador Grekveth. "The Gorthak Empire will present its case first." Grekveth rose. His claws clicked against the podium as he gripped it. He spoke for 3 hours about the history of the disputed territory, about the death of his son, about the threat that humans pose to galactic stability. He presented sensor data showing human fleet movements. He showed recordings of human weapons tests. He played audio of human military communications that sounded aggressive and confrontational to non-human ears. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Ambassador Lewis rose to respond. He did not speak for 3 hours. He spoke for 20 minutes. "Everything Ambassador Grekveth has shown you is true. We have built warships. We have tested weapons. We have trained our military to respond to threats. We have done these things because we observed the galaxy around us and drew logical conclusions about what was coming. Let me show you something he did not show you." Lewis activated a display. It showed a timeline of Gorthak military expansion over the preceding 2 centuries. System after system appeared on the map, each one marked with the date of Gorthak annexation. In the 200 years before we arrived on the galactic scene, the Gorthak Empire absorbed 12 independent systems. They subjugated 5 species. They fought 7 wars. They won all of them. Now look at this. He overlaid a second map. It showed human colony locations and fleet positions. We built our military infrastructure along the border that the Gorthak were most likely to cross. We positioned our fleets near the systems they had already claimed. We developed weapons that could counter the ones they had used in their previous conquests. We did not build these things to attack the Gorthak. We built them because the Gorthak had attacked every neighbor they had ever had. We were preparing for the inevitable. You cannot prove that your preparations were defensive, Keltor said. No, I cannot. And they cannot prove that their invasion of New Hope was provoked. That is the nature of war. Both sides believe they are right. Both sides have evidence that supports their position. The only question that matters is which side fired the first shot. The Gorthak fired the first shot, Keltor said quietly. Yes, they did, Ambassador Lewis replied. And you expect us to believe that humanity bears no responsibility for this conflict? I expect you to look at the evidence and make a judgment. If you believe that preparing to defend yourself is the same as starting a war, then you have already decided. If you believe that a species has the right to survive, then the choice is clear. The formal debate began on the third day. Representative Cor Ven of the Vorg Mercantile Guild was the first to speak. His species valued profit above all else. They saw the galaxy as a marketplace and every interaction as a transaction. The human presence in galactic trade has been disruptive, he said. They offer goods and services at prices that undercut established markets. They share technology without licensing agreements. They provide assistance without charging fees. This undermines the economic stability of multiple member species. Free trade is a crime now? Ambassador Lewis asked. Unregulated trade is a crime. Your people ignore centuries of trade protocols. You deal directly with customers instead of going through established guild channels. You negotiate prices based on what you think is fair rather than what the market dictates. We think fair prices are lower prices. That is not how economics works. That is how human economics works. We charge what we think is reasonable. We do not inflate prices just because we can. Representative Velna Thess of the Corn Collective rose next. Her species valued order above all else. They had strict laws governing every aspect of life. Human cultural output is a concern, she said. Their entertainment media glorifies violence and conflict. Their historical records are filled with wars and revolutions. Their art often depicts suffering and struggle. This content is being distributed across the galaxy and influencing our young. Are you suggesting we censor our art? I am suggesting that your species appears to be obsessed with conflict in a way that is unhealthy for the broader galactic community. Our art reflects our experience. We have been through difficult periods in our history. That struggle is part of who we are. We do not glorify violence. We acknowledge it. There is a difference. To a human, perhaps. To the rest of us, the distinction is not clear. Representative Gorth Vorn of the Krell Dominion spoke again. His species viewed humans as a direct threat to galactic stability. The humans have established colonies in 12 systems outside their original territory. They have built military bases in 4 of them. They have developed weapons technology that exceeds what should be possible for a species of their age. We built those bases after the Gorthak attacked us. We developed those weapons because we saw what was coming. You saw what was coming and you prepared for it. That is precisely the problem. You anticipated conflict and armed yourselves accordingly. Should we have done nothing? Should we have waited to be attacked without preparing a defense? A responsible species would have brought their concerns to the Council and allowed us to mediate. We did bring our concerns to the Council. For 138 years, we brought our concerns to the Council. We reported the Gorthak territorial claims. We requested mediation. We asked for protection. The Council did nothing. The Council was deliberating. While it deliberated, the Gorthak built a fleet and attacked our colony. While it deliberated, humans died. While it deliberated, Ambassador Grekvetha's son was killed in a war that should never have happened. Gorth Vorn's eyes narrowed. You are blaming the Council for the actions of a human farmer? I am blaming the Council for failing to prevent a war. If the Council had acted when we first raised the alarm, none of this would have happened. The Gorthak would have been restrained. The colony would have been protected, and Ambassador Grekvetha's son would still be alive. A murmur spread through the chamber. The logic was uncomfortable. It was also undeniable. High Arbiter Keltor called for order. We are not here to assign blame for the past. We are here to determine how to proceed. The question before the Council is whether humanity should continue to hold a place in galactic society. I move, said Ambassador Grekveth, that humanity be banned from the Galactic Council, that their ambassador be recalled, that their vessels be restricted to their own territories, that their colonies be placed under galactic supervision until a permanent solution can be determined. There are no permanent solutions, Ambassador Lewis said quietly. There are only temporary arrangements that we all pretend will last forever. The debate continued for days. Representative Zara Morn of the Xylosian Federation spoke in favor of humanity. Her species had worked closely with humans on several engineering projects and had developed a deep respect for their capabilities. The humans have never broken a treaty. They have never initiated a conflict. They have never refused to provide assistance when asked. They have been model members of the galactic community since the day they arrived. They killed my son, Grekveth said. Your son died in a war that your species started. I am sorry for your loss. But you cannot blame the victim for defending themselves. The humans are not the victims. They are the threat. What evidence do you have that humanity poses a threat to the galaxy? They destroyed 30 warships. They lost 7. That is a threat. That is a military victory in a defensive engagement. If the Gorthak had won, would you be calling for a ban on the Gorthak? The Gorthak are a founding species of this council. They have been members for over 2,000 years. Then this is not about justice. It is about politics. Representative Torn Krill of the Vorlothi Confederacy rose to support the ban. His species had lost trade routes to human competition. The humans destabilize every system they touch. Their economic practices are predatory. Their cultural exports are corrosive. Their military capabilities are excessive. They do not belong in galactic society. You mean they compete with you too effectively? Representative Zara Morn replied. I mean they do not follow the rules that the rest of us agreed to. The rules were designed to protect established interests. The humans challenge those interests. That is not a crime. That is progress. Progress is not always positive. Neither is stagnation. But the Vorlothi seemed comfortable with it. The chamber erupted into shouted arguments. I recorded every word. I cataloged every accusation and every defense. The Pcath do not judge. We only preserve. Representative Thessa Vorn of the Felner Concord rose. The Felner were a species of avian beings, their bodies covered in feathers that shifted color with their mood. Their representative was agitated, her plumage flashing red and orange. The humans have introduced chaos into our carefully ordered systems, she said. Their entertainment media has caused social disruptions on 17 of our member worlds. Young Felner have begun imitating human behavior patterns. They question authority. They challenge traditions. They demand change. Sounds like a natural response to encountering a new perspective, Representative Zara Morn observed. It is a threat to cultural stability. Our society has functioned smoothly for 3,000 years. The humans threaten to unravel that in a single generation. Perhaps your society needed unraveling. Representative Cor Ven of the Vorg Mercantile Guild stood again. The economic argument alone should be sufficient. Human trade practices have cost member species over 2 billion credits in lost revenue. Their refusal to participate in established pricing structures undermines the entire galactic economy. The galactic economy was rigged to benefit established interests, Ambassador Lewis replied. We simply found ways to deliver goods and services more efficiently. Efficiency is not the only value. No, but it is a value. And it is one your guild has consistently ignored in favor of profit margins. Representative Velna Thess of the Korn Collective spoke again. There is also the matter of human genetic modification. Our records indicate that humans have extensively modified their own genome. They have eliminated dozens of hereditary diseases. They have enhanced cognitive function. They have extended their natural lifespan by 40%. That is not a crime, Lewis said. It is a violation of the Galactic Ethical Standards Agreement that your species signed when you applied for membership. We signed that agreement before we understood its full implications. The agreement prohibits modification that creates genetic inequality between species. Our modifications were applied to our own species uniformly. Every human has access to the same enhancements. Not every human can afford them. No, but we are working on that. And we are closer to universal access than any species in this chamber. Representative Droth of the Assembly spoke next. The Droth were a silicon-based species who communicated through vibration patterns translated by a mechanical interface. Their representative's voice was a low hum that resonated through the chamber floor. The humans represent an existential threat to the assembly, the translator rendered. They have developed weapons that can damage our crystalline structures. They have explored systems that we consider our sovereign territory. They have refused to share their metallurgical advances with us. We offered to share, Lewis said. Your assembly refused our diplomatic envoys 3 times. You would not even meet with our scientists. Your scientists requested access to our homeworld. That was unacceptable. We requested a meeting at a neutral location. Your assembly insisted on controlling all communications channels. We declined because we do not negotiate under monitored conditions. You are paranoid. We are cautious. There is a difference. On the 7th day, Ambassador Lewis requested permission to address the Council directly. High Arbiter Keltor granted it. Lewis stood at the human station and looked around the chamber. He seemed small, surrounded by beings from 100 species, beings who had lived for centuries, beings who commanded fleets and economies and entire civilizations. He was just a human from a planet that had barely escaped its own gravity well. But he was not afraid. Esteemed representatives, he began, I have listened to this debate for 7 days. I have heard accusations that my species is too violent, too competitive, too dangerous, too disruptive. I have heard that we do not follow the rules, that we undermine established systems, that we threaten the stability of galactic society. He paused. All of these accusations are true. The chamber fell silent. We are a species shaped by our history. Our history includes wars and conflicts and failures. We have done terrible things to each other. We have invaded and conquered and oppressed. We have made mistakes that cost millions of lives. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have built systems of law and governance to prevent them from happening again. We have created institutions that check our worst impulses. We have slowly and imperfectly become better than we used to be. We are not done. We will never be done. That is the point. He looked directly at Ambassador Grekveth. We did not ask to be the species we are. We became what we are through trial and error, through success and failure, through hope and despair. Every generation of humans has faced problems that seemed unsolvable. Every generation has found solutions. We reached the stars and found you. We found a galaxy full of species who had solved the problems that still plagued us. You had peace and stability and order. You had systems that worked. You had agreements that held. We wanted to be part of that. We wanted to learn from you. We wanted to contribute. But we discovered that your peace was built on inequality. Your stability was built on stagnation. Your order was built on the suppression of anyone who threatened the established hierarchy. For 138 years, we watched you protect your interests while claiming to serve the common good. We watched you stifle innovation to protect old industries. We watched you maintain your power by keeping others down. You did not want us to join your society. You wanted us to accept our place in it. We could not do that. We will not do that. So if you choose to ban us, know this, you are not punishing us. You are freeing us from a system that was never designed to include us as equals. He sat down. I have nothing more to say. The Council will decide what it will decide, and humanity will accept whatever judgment you render. The vote was called on the 9th day. High Arbiter Keltor presided over the roll call. Species after species declared their position. Vorg Mercantile Guild, in favor of the ban. Korn Collective, in favor of the ban. Krell Dominion, in favor of the ban. Vorlothi Confederacy, in favor of the ban. Gorthak Empire, in favor of the ban. Felner Concord, in favor of the ban. Droth Assembly, in favor of the ban. Zarn Hegemony, in favor of the ban. The list continued. Most species voted in favor. Some abstained. A few voted against. Valdari Commonwealth, opposed to the ban. The Valdari were the first species humans had met. They had watched their protégés grow from a curious young species into a galactic power. They had seen humanity at its best and its worst, and they still believed in them. Talarian Confederacy, opposed to the ban. The Talarians had worked alongside humans on dozens of projects. They knew what humans were capable of. They also knew what humans were fighting against. When the final tally was announced, the result was overwhelming. The majority voted to ban humanity from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Grekveth stood tall. His grief had transformed into triumph. The Council has spoken. Humanity is expelled from galactic society. Their ambassador is to be recalled. Their vessels are restricted to their territories. Their colonies are to be placed under supervision. He turned to Ambassador Lewis. You have until the end of this galactic cycle to vacate your station. After that, your presence on Council worlds will be considered an act of aggression. Ambassador Lewis rose. He adjusted his jacket. He walked to the center of the chamber. And then he did something that no one expected. He smiled. "Thank you," he said. The chamber went silent. "What did you say?" High Arbiter Keltor asked. "I said thank you. On behalf of the human species, I thank the Galactic Council for this decision. You are thanking us for banning you? I am thanking you for freeing us." Lewis looked around the chamber. His voice was calm and measured. "For 259 years, we have followed your rules. We have respected your authority. We have deferred to your judgment. We have accepted our place in your hierarchy. We did this because we believed that membership in the galactic community was worth the compromise. We believed that if we proved ourselves, we would eventually be accepted as equals. But we were wrong. You never intended to accept us. You intended to use us. The ban you have imposed removes every restriction that bound us. We are no longer subject to your trade agreements that protected monopolies. We are no longer bound by your territorial laws that preserve the status quo. We are no longer limited by your military restrictions that kept us dependent on your protection. We are free to build something better. Humanity thanks you for this gift. We will not waste it." He walked back to his station and began gathering his belongings. The council session was adjourned. I recorded the final words of the High Arbiter as he declared the matter closed. I recorded the departure of Ambassador Lewis as he walked out of the chamber for the last time. I recorded the silence that followed. The Path do not offer opinions. But I will note, for the permanent archive, that the silence registered differently after the humans left. It registered as more empty. The war began within a month. The Gorthak Empire, emboldened by the Council's decision, launched a full-scale invasion of human space. They expected a quick victory. They had more ships. They had more soldiers. They had the backing of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They were wrong. The Terran Defense Force met them at every turn. Admiral William Collins, known to his crew as Badger, commanded the human fleets with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy. He did not fight the way the Gorthak expected. He did not line up his ships for formal engagements. He used ambushes and feints and traps. He struck supply lines. He targeted command vessels. He turned the battlefield into a nightmare of unpredictability. The first major engagement was the Battle of Proxima Station. The Gorthak sent 15 ships to capture the human refueling depot. They expected minimal resistance. Instead, they found Commodore Sarah Donovan and the 7th Fleet waiting for them. Donovan had anticipated the attack. She had positioned her ships behind the system's gas giant, using its gravity well to mask their approach. When the Gorthak entered the system, they flew straight into a kill box. Donovan lost 2 ships. The Gorthak lost 11. The second engagement happened 3 days later at the Tau Ceti Shipyards. The Gorthak sent a strike force to destroy the human production facilities. Captain James Okafor commanded the defense. He had only 6 ships against 12 Gorthak vessels. He used the shipyard infrastructure as cover, darting between construction gantries and fuel storage tanks, forcing the Gorthak to choose between hitting their targets or protecting their ships. They chose their ships. The shipyard survived. The Gorthak lost 4 more vessels. The third engagement was the Battle of New Hope itself. The Gorthak attempted to recapture the colony they had lost. They sent 20 ships this time, their largest single force of the war. Admiral Collins met them personally aboard his flagship, the TDF Hammer of Dawn. Collins had 30 ships. He did not use all of them. He held 10 in reserve, hiding them behind the planet's moon. The battle lasted 6 hours. Collins committed his main force first, engaging the Gorthak in a straight fight that cost both sides heavy losses. When the Gorthak committed their reserves, Collins sprang his trap. The 10 ships he had hidden emerged from behind the moon and struck the Gorthak from the rear. The Gorthak lost 14 ships that day. The humans lost 8. New Hope remained in human hands. The Gorthak lost 30 ships in the first week. They lost 60 more in the second. By the end of the first month, the Gorthak fleet had been reduced by half. The human fleet, by contrast, had grown. Shipyards that had been working in secret for decades were now operating at full capacity. New vessels launched every week. Crews that had been training in simulators were now fighting real battles and winning. The council watched in horror. Representative Gorth Vorn demanded that the council intervene. The humans are violating every convention of civilized warfare. They strike without warning. They refuse formal engagements. They target non-military infrastructure. Nothing in their actions violates the laws of war, Representative Zara Morn of the Talarians pointed out. They are fighting a defensive war against an invader. They are using strategies that exploit their advantages. That is not a crime. Those strategies are barbaric. They are effective. There is a difference. The Gorthak requested assistance from their allies. The Vorlothi sent ships. The Droth sent supplies. The Khorne sent observers and advisors. None of it was enough. On the ground, the war was even more brutal. Colonel Jean-Pierre Moreau commanded the human ground forces on New Hope. He had 40,000 soldiers against 80,000 Gorthak troops. He used terrain and tactics and sheer human determination to hold the line. His soldiers fought from trenches and bunkers and collapsed buildings. They used weapons that the Gorthak considered primitive. Moreau lost 12,000 soldiers in the first 6 months. The Gorthak lost 30,000. The turning point came when Lieutenant Amara Obi led a company of soldiers through a tunnel network that the Gorthak had not mapped. She emerged behind their main defensive line and destroyed their forward supply depot. The Gorthak front line collapsed within a week. Lieutenant Obi was promoted to captain on the battlefield. She was 24 years old. The human offensive began in the 6th month. Admiral Collins divided his fleet into 12 task forces and sent them into Gorthak space along multiple axes. They struck shipyards and supplied depots and communication hubs. They destroyed the Gorthak's ability to wage war without ever engaging their main battle fleet in a decisive confrontation. Captain Okafor led a strike force into the Gorthak industrial heartland. He destroyed 3 shipyards and 2 fuel processing stations. Commodore Donovan led a blockade of the Gorthak supply routes. She intercepted 12 convoys carrying weapons and ammunition. Colonel Moreau launched a series of precision strikes on Gorthak command centers, decapitating their ground forces leadership. The Gorthak homeworld was blockaded in the 9th month. Admiral Collins positioned his fleet in a sphere around the planet, 1,000 kilometers of empty space between his ships and the atmosphere. Nothing entered, nothing left. Ambassador Grekveth appeared before the council one final time. His scales had faded further. His eyes were dull. His voice was barely a whisper. "Help us," he said. The council debated for 3 days. Some species argued for intervention. Others argued that the Gorthak had started the war and should face the consequences. Others argued that intervening would only draw the conflict out further. In the end, the council did what it always did when faced with a difficult decision. It delayed. It formed a committee. It requested more information. While the council debated, Admiral Collins received a transmission from Earth. President Charles Asher was 52 years old. His hair was gray. His face was lined. His eyes held the weight of command. "Badger, what is the status of the blockade?" "Complete, Mr. President. Nothing goes in. Nothing comes out. The Gorthak homeworld is suffocating. How long can they hold out? 6 months. Maybe 8. Their food production is down by 70%. Their medical supplies are critical. Their government has requested negotiations 12 times. And what do you recommend?" Admiral Collins leaned back in his chair. He had served the Terran Defense Force for 41 years. He had fought in 15 engagements. He had never lost a battle. "I recommend we end this, Mr. President. Not because we cannot win, but because we have already won. Continuing the blockade serves no purpose. It only creates suffering. The Gorthak invaded our colony. They killed our people. They demanded our expulsion from the galactic community. Yes, sir, they did. And we defeated them. We proved that we cannot be conquered. We proved that we will not be intimidated. Continuing to punish them now does not make us stronger. It makes us look like them." President Asher was silent for a long moment. "Admiral, you are recommending mercy. I am recommending strategy, sir. Mercy is a strategy. It disarms your enemies more effectively than any weapon. If we show mercy now, the Gorthak will remember it, and so will every other species watching. You want to set an example. I want to prove that we are better than they think we are." The blockade was lifted on the same day. Admiral Collins allowed humanitarian aid to reach the Gorthak homeworld. Food, medicine, engineering support, all provided without conditions. The Gorthak government collapsed within a week. Not because of the blockade, because of the mercy. The Gorthak people had prepared themselves for annihilation. They had stored weapons in their homes. They had written final messages to their children. They had accepted that their species was about to end. And then the humans had sent food. The cognitive dissonance was too much for the government to survive. The regime fell. A new government took its place, one that immediately sued for peace. The terms were simple. The Gorthak would recognize human sovereignty over all territories they currently held. They would pay reparations for the damage caused by the invasion of New Hope. They would renounce all claims to human space. In exchange, the humans would help rebuild the Gorthak economy. They would share technology. They would establish trade relations. They would treat the Gorthak as equals. The treaty was signed in GSY 6200, human year 2553. The war had lasted 3 human years. In the same year, the humans proposed a new kind of interstellar government. They called it the Galactic Assembly. Every species would have a seat. Every species would have an equal vote. No more weighted voting based on economic power or military strength. No more vetoes for founding members. One species, one voice. On Earth, President Asher addressed the Terran Council. I obtained a recording of his speech through human diplomatic channels. I have preserved it in the archive. Counselors of Humanity. 3 years ago, the Galactic Council banned us from their society. They called us dangerous. They called us primitive. They called us a threat to galactic stability. Today, we have proven them wrong. Not by destroying our enemies, but by choosing not to. We fought a war that was forced upon us. We won it through courage and sacrifice and the skill of our soldiers and officers. We could have continued. We could have exacted revenge. We could have become the monsters they accused us of being. To the families of the soldiers who died defending New Hope, your loss is not forgotten. To the crew of the TDF Hammer of Dawn, who gave their lives so that others might live, your sacrifice is honored. To every human who served, who built, who supported this effort, you have shown the galaxy what humanity truly is. We are not a threat. We are not a danger. We are not the barbarians they feared. We are survivors. We are builders. We are the species that was told it could not belong and decided to build its own home. The Terran Council rose to its feet. The applause lasted 12 minutes. Ambassador Ian Lewis watched the speech from his residence on Mars. He had been recalled from the Council before the war began. He spent the conflict advising the diplomatic corps on post-war strategy. He was 63 years old now, but his mind was as sharp as ever. He sent a message to President Asher after the speech. Mr. President, the offer still stands. If you want me to return to the Council when this is over, I will go. But I do not think there will be a council to return to. He was right. Representative Zara Morn of the Talarian Confederacy addressed the Council on the day the treaty was announced. The humans have done something unprecedented. They have won a total victory against a species that outnumbered them and outgunned them. And then they offered peace instead of conquest. They offered help instead of humiliation. They had no choice, Representative Gorthak said. Their military was exhausted. Their resources were depleted. That is not true. Admiral Collins had a fleet that was fully operational. The human shipyards were producing vessels faster than they could be crewed. They had the capacity to continue the war for years. They chose to stop. Why? I asked President Asher that question. He told me something I did not expect. Which is, he said, the point of winning is to end the fighting. If you keep fighting after you have already won, you have missed the point. Representative Gorthak had no response to that. The Council never recovered from the war. The sessions that followed were hollow. The representatives went through the motions of governance, but everyone knew that the balance of power had shifted. A species that had been banned from the Council had defeated a founding member in a straight military conflict. A species that had been dismissed as primitive had demonstrated capabilities that no one had anticipated. A species that had been told to leave had returned with the power to destroy anyone who opposed them. And they had chosen not to. This, more than anything, was what broke the Council. The humans who fought the war returned to lives that had changed forever. Admiral William Collins retired from active service in GSY 6202.5, human year 2555. He wrote a book about his experiences titled The Weight of Command. It became a bestseller across human space and was translated into 43 alien languages. He spent his remaining years teaching strategy at the Terran Naval Academy. A young Valdari officer once asked him what the most important lesson of the war was. Collins said, "Win quickly, then stop. That is harder than it sounds." Captain James Okafor continued his military career. He was promoted to Commodore and given command of a task force responsible for patrolling the Gorthak border. He maintained a correspondence with several Gorthak officers who had served under the old regime. They exchanged messages about tactics and philosophy and the nature of duty. Okafor visited the Gorthak homeworld in GSY 6205, human year 2557, as part of a diplomatic exchange. The Gorthak media called it the arrival of a man who could have destroyed us and chose not to. Commodore Sarah Donovan was elected to the Terran Council in GSY 6203.75, human year 2556. She served on the Foreign Relations Committee and advocated for expanded engagement with former council species. She once said in a speech, "We were banned from the club, so we built a better one. Now the old members are asking to join. That is not revenge. That is progress." Colonel Jean-Pierre Moreau stayed on New Hope after the war. He helped rebuild the colony that he had defended. He supervised the construction of a memorial to the soldiers who had died in the invasion. It listed human names and Gorthak names side by side. When asked why he included the enemy dead, Moreau said, "They were soldiers following orders. Their names deserve to be remembered too." Captain Amara Obi left the military in GSY 6206.25, human year 2558. She founded a charitable organization that provided medical aid to former enemy worlds. Her first project was a hospital on the Gorthak homeworld, built with human resources and staffed by human doctors. The Gorthak government awarded her their highest civilian honor. She accepted it in person. Anna Whitfield never left New Hope. She continued farming the same land she had been tilling when the invasion began. She gave interviews occasionally, always reluctantly. She did not consider herself a hero. She considered herself a woman who had protected her home. The shotgun she used that day was placed in a museum on Earth. She refused to attend the ceremony. "I have work to do," she said. "The crops will not harvest themselves." Lieutenant Commander Thomas Adeyemi served as Admiral Collins's tactical officer during the war. He was responsible for plotting the Blockade formation around the Gorthak homeworld. After the war, he helped design the traffic control systems that the Galactic Assembly used to manage the flow of ships between member worlds. He often said that war taught him how to organize things. Peace gave him something better to organize. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was the chief medical officer on New Hope during the Gorthak invasion. She treated soldiers and civilians alike, often working 48-hour shifts without rest. She saved the lives of over 300 people. After the war, she established a medical exchange program that trained Gorthak doctors in human techniques and human doctors in Gorthak techniques. She received the Order of the Phoenix from the Terran government and the Star of Compassion from the new Gorthak administration. Chief Engineer David Park served on the TDF Hammer of Dawn. When the ship was damaged during the Battle of New Hope, he crawled into a section of the hull that was exposed to vacuum to make emergency repairs. He was in space for 90 seconds without a suit. His crewmates pulled him back inside just as his oxygen reserves ran out. He spent 6 months in recovery. Then he returned to active duty and served for another 20 years. He never spoke about what he did. His crewmates spoke about it for him. The Valdari Commonwealth formally withdrew from the Old Council in GSY 6202.5, human year 2555. Their representative, Ambassador Lyra Valoris, gave a closing statement that I recorded for the archive. "We joined this council because we believed in the principle of cooperation. We remained because we believed that dialogue could resolve differences. We leave because we no longer believe that this body is capable of fulfilling its purpose." The council had the opportunity to welcome a young species and guide them toward peaceful coexistence. Instead, it chose fear. It chose exclusion. It chose to side with an aggressor against its victim. The council was wrong. We will take our place in the Galactic Assembly. We will not allow the failures of this body to prevent us from building a better future. The Talarian Confederacy withdrew the following year and joined the Assembly. Other species followed. Some left because they agreed with the Valdari. Others left because they saw which way the wind was blowing. Others left because the old council had become irrelevant and they saw no point in continuing to participate. By GSY 6206.25, human year 2558, the Galactic Council had ceased to function. The meetings grew shorter. The attendance dwindled. The resolutions went unenforced. The Great Chamber that had once held representatives from 112 species now held fewer than 20. The podium stood empty. The translation system sat idle. The archives recorded session after session of procedural formalities that led nowhere. The Gorthak requested membership in the Galactic Assembly in GSY 6206.25, human year 2558. Their new government understood where the future lay. The Droth Assembly, seeing the direction of galactic politics, opened formal relations with the Assembly in GSY 6207.5, human year 2559. The Khorne Collective followed in GSY 6208.75, human year 2560, after their internal debates concluded that isolation was more dangerous than engagement. Even the Vorg Mercantile Guild, the species that had argued most passionately for the human ban, quietly began trade negotiations with human corporations. Profit, it turned out, was more powerful than prejudice. Ambassador Ian Lewis returned to the Council chamber one last time in GSY 6208.75, human year 2560, not as a diplomat, but as an observer. He walked through the empty corridors alone. He stood at the podium where he had thanked the Council for banning his species. He stayed there for a long time, looking at the empty seats where 100 species had once voted to expel humanity. Then he left. He never went back. The final session of the old Council was held in GSY 6208.75, human year 2560. Only 7 species sent representatives. High Arbiter Keltor presided over a chamber that was mostly empty. He read a brief statement. The Galactic Council, having served the galactic community for over 6,000 years, is hereby dissolved. The records of this body will be preserved by the path for any future civilizations that wish to study our successes and our failures. He paused. I recommend they study our failures more closely. There are more lessons there. He left the chamber without another word. I was the last being to leave. I gathered the final records. I sealed the archives. I walked through the empty corridors, past the podiums where 100 species had once debated the fate of civilizations. The path do not offer opinions, but I will record this for the permanent archive. Every species in the galaxy believed that being banned from the Council was the worst thing that could happen to a civilization. It meant isolation. It meant irrelevance. It meant being cut off from the community of the stars. The humans looked at the same situation and saw something completely different. They saw freedom from rules that were designed to hold them back. They saw release from obligations that had never benefited them. They saw an opportunity to build something that had never existed before. The humans said thank you when the Council banned them. And they meant it. The humans did not destroy the Council. The Council destroyed itself. The humans just had the wisdom to say thank you when it happened. The Valdari were the first to join the Assembly. The Talarians followed. The Xylosians came next. The Gorthak, under their new government, requested membership. The Vorlothi came later, after their trade guilds realized that being outside the Assembly cost them more than being inside it. Even the Vorg Mercantile Guild applied, though their application was delayed while the new Assembly reviewed their past practices. I have been cataloging the activities of the Galactic Assembly for 15 years now. I have recorded trade agreements and scientific collaborations and cultural exchanges and joint military exercises. I have watched species that were once enemies become partners. I have also watched the humans. They arrived at the Assembly with the same energy they brought to everything else. They built. They traded. They explored. They made friends of former enemies and allies of former rivals. A human engineer named David Okonkwo designed a power system that the Valdari now use on all their colony worlds. A human biologist named Fatima al-Rashid developed a treatment for a disease that had plagued the Khorne for centuries. The Khorne had voted to ban humanity. The humans treated their sick anyway. That is the detail that I return to most often. Not the battles. Not the politics. Not the grand speeches. A biologist from Earth, working in a laboratory, developing a cure for a species that had tried to expel her people from the galaxy. When asked why she did it, Dr. al-Rashid said, because they needed help. And I could help them. It is a simple answer. It is also the most profound thing I have ever recorded. The Galactic Assembly has a chamber. It has formal sessions. It has votes and resolutions. Every species stands on equal ground. The Valdari speak, and their voice counts the same as the Gorthak. The Talarians propose a resolution, and it carries the same weight as one from the Corn. The humans sit among them as equals, not as masters. It works. Humans are strange beings. They carry the scars of their history in their culture, and their art, and their memory. They are capable of terrible violence when they are threatened, but they are also capable of extraordinary kindness. They won the war against the Gorthak and then offered peace. They were banned from the council and said thank you. They had every reason to become bitter and vengeful and imperial. Instead, they built something better. I do not know what the future holds. The path do not predict. We only record. But I have been recording long enough to recognize patterns. The Galactic Council was ancient. It was stable. It was ordered. And it was brittle. It could not adapt. It could not change. It could not admit when it was wrong. The humans were young. They were chaotic. They were unpredictable. And they could adapt. They could change. They could admit when they were wrong. The old council fell because it refused to evolve. The Galactic Assembly thrives because evolution is its entire foundation. Perhaps that is the lesson. Perhaps that is what the archives will tell future civilizations. The species that cannot change will be replaced by the ones that can. I am Cataloger First Class Jo'van Lysa of the PCAF. I have served the galactic community for over 300 years. I have recorded the rise and fall of civilizations. I have seen empires crumble and new orders emerge. And I have recorded this truth for the permanent archive. When the Galactic Council banned humanity, the humans said, thank you. They meant it. They knew something that the council did not. They knew that freedom was more valuable than belonging. They knew that being expelled from a broken system was not a punishment. It was an opportunity. The council thought it was punishing humanity. Humanity thought it was being set free. Both were right, but only one of them understood what that meant. The human ambassador was the last human to walk the corridors of the council. He left without looking back. He had a war to prepare for. He had a species to defend. He had a future to build. He built it. And the galaxy has never been the same. Please like and subscribe to our channel.